All right, what is up, Partner Up? We're back. Isaac's in the chair. I'm liking that we're back on a schedule, Isaac, consistently rolling things out every Tuesday. Amazing guests, amazing content. Partner Up's back, people. How you feeling, man?
Man, I am taking on the mantle of the backwards hat now that you are all cleaned up and adult-like. So I'm going to go ahead and just degenerate a little bit while you continue to move in the other direction. By the way, I just noticed I have on the Ecosystem Week t-shirt. I believe that was exactly 1 year ago today. We're recording this on June 13th. Wasn't Ecosystem Week June 13th when we kicked it off?
I think so. I think that was the timeline.
Yeah, shout out to Partner Stag. That was an epic event. That was the moment when I was like, oh crap, we have to do events, don't we?
Right. Yeah, that was totally the moment. And actually, we're syncing up with Tyler here soon, so stay tuned. Maybe something around that week is coming back, maybe not. But we are talking, so keep listening out. But I'm excited today to talk about something we haven't really dove into. There's a bunch of great content creators out there right now to talk about the intersect of agencies and partnerships. And while this topic is like I certainly relate to as much as any in partnerships, being why I own my own agency. And I could have been a HubSpot partner in 2011, 2012, 2013, and I wasn't, so I was an idiot. I learned most of what I know about partnerships from Pete Caputa and HubSpot's partner program. Everyone knows here that I think that they really are the gold standard for how you build a company around this. So I brought longtime connection and friend onto the show, and I've been on his podcast, Barrett King, over here to Partner Up to talk about what the heck's happening in the world of agencies. Barrett, welcome the heck to Partner Up, my man.
I'm pumped. What's up, guys? And the backwards hat, Isaac, absolutely working for you. Jared, the coif, the hair, the comb over, dude, he's crushing it. You guys are nailing it. The look is great.
Oh my gosh. I do not like that this is becoming a topic of recent conversations. We were at an event last week, Barrett, where people in the, literally in chat, people were like, Isaac, you need to tell Jared the new look's okay, but he's wore that shirt before. And I'm like,
oh, that's not good.
No, audience, you're not allowed to comment on this. No. Let's not bring that into question. I am style illiterate. I have to have my my wife dress me. So, Barrett, speaking of style, I think in terms of trends right now, this all kind of like kicked off for me and made me realize how serious this moment was, but also gave me a lot of like, it calmed me down as I listened to Kip Bodnar from HubSpot talk at the Pavilion CMO Summit. And Kip didn't mince any words about the disruptive nature of AI over the next several years, right? Like right this second, right now, if you're using AI for generative content, I think you're an idiot, in my opinion. AI is not a generative content tool, but it does a lot of things. And of course, we'll get better over the coming months. I mean, I think we can say months at this point, not years. Months for other use cases that facilitate and disrupt a lot of, go-to-market. And I have to imagine that the team at HubSpot, Kip gave me a lot of like, okay, HubSpot's going to figure this out, but what do you do with the agency partners? If, the big innovation that Pete told me about in the beginning was like, we help them sell a better product. And I don't mean HubSpot. I mean what? I used to sell one-time big package, hey, website redesign, 50 grand, right? And then 3 months later, my P&L goes to zero. Cash flow is nothing, right? And I'm like, I got to sell more and then deliver more. So there's this very lumpy, terrible business. HubSpot innovated. The true innovation to me was helping that business move to a recurring retainer-based model, obviously creating content for the CMS, mutual benefit, like everything in partnership land connects. Entire industry that's doing things the wrong way. HubSpot launches a CMS, builds a partner program around it. They write content and help you use the product better month over month. But now everyone's kind of like, wait a second, what the heck is going on? What are we going to do with this shift? What the heck are you seeing, man?
I think it's interesting because it's what you described. Like what HubSpot did really well was the foundational statement of we help you move from project to retainer. Like that was the fundamental go-to-market language and just straight deliverable that we gave to our partners early. Our partners were marketing agencies, SMB marketing agencies, folks that were 5, 10, 15 employees, 20, 30, 40 maybe employees, but they were smaller in their growth cycle and they were trying to build the go-to-market beyond the four corners that they had established before that. I think fundamentally what worked was that we were able to give them a solution that allowed them to deliver tangible ROI more effectively, improve their team's efficiency, all the stuff that you would think directly correlates to what AI, to your point, in an aspirational way should do. Like I think AI is interesting. And if you're listening to this someday, like we're cool, we're homies, we're friends, don't like destroy my house or whatever's going to happen. Everyone always jokes like, is it Skynet in the future? I think AI, and I agree with you, to some extent becomes this additive component to augment the work that truly good, exceptional employees are doing today. And maybe somewhere down the road that changes, who knows? I think from the agency perspective, it's a close margin, human capital centric business model that delivers exceptional value to the end customer, but is wholly reliant on people and ability to get to that outcome. How fast we do the work, how effective can we do it? What is the value of that in terms of market? Does it get commoditized or not? All of those questions start to become a little blurry when you bring in tools that can be additive to that go-to-market. So when I think about the impact on agency in particular, and I think about it in context of like certainly companies like HubSpot, other organizations that have an ecosystem around the agency, smaller SI space, how much you bring tools like that into your own stack, step one. Like how far can you bring something like AI as a enablement component of your solution to then deliver value back to those agencies? That's sort of like the first step of it. And the second piece obviously is determining how to enable them to build services around it. Again, to your point, Jared, like I think we and companies like HubSpot have been very intentional around saying it's not just about buying our software or reselling our software. It's about building a collective, better together story in which you improve your margins, deliver better value to the customer, all the things I just described. AI throws a wrench in that.
Right. So the couple things that I want to unpack from this, because you can already tell folks, if you don't follow Barrett on LinkedIn, you definitely should pay attention to his show. The way that you're approaching this, I think, is very intelligent. And I'm like out of the loop a little bit in terms of since the, let's say, advent of GPT and the mass proliferation of this concept. But when I've brought technologies or solutions to agencies and been in a position, let's just use, I can talk about this, like Drift in live chat, right? So like I was working with a bunch of agencies, and the agencies where it worked is I tended to have to go a little bit more up market, tie it into an ABM strategy, really get more deeply integrated with marketing automation, get sticky, larger sales team. It got really complicated, and that's how I built service hours. But something that I thought would work really well was something like this. Tell me if this analogy would work for AI or it wouldn't work for AI, is that there are agencies that would run what? Live chat centers, right? And they would bill on what, like a per agent kind of per hour type model. And I'm like, look, the business that you sell right now is what? I mean, it's 30, 40% gross margin, maybe 50% gross margin if you're kicking butt, right? So it's a low margin business. And what I brought into these organizations was like, look at how we can do these exact same things, keep your billings the same, but drive a double on your margin, right? So for example, instead of selling 10 agents into this account, you could do with our Drift AI what you need with 5 agents or 4 agents, but still have a much bigger margin. And no matter what I did, didn't matter who I talked to, all but one agency really leaned into that and just didn't make that, it didn't work. Like when I was like, hey, I can help you improve your margins. And it was objective. Like we had a lot of proof. Drift had a great brand. And we were successful with agencies, just not in that way. Is that because that was good times and now it's bad times and agencies are like, shoot, we need to change? Or like, would that same pitch be a relevant thing? Hey, utilize AI to drive better margin in terms of production of content, but then also adapt it for social, for instance. Or, hey, you better go down the stack and also integrate it into the other tech tools that they use. Like, where are you seeing the offering change from retainer and selling hours to packaging and stuff like that? Where are we at in this transformation? Hopefully that's helpful setup.
No, it is. I think it's too early to decide whether this is something that becomes a service or something that becomes an internal tool. And the reason I say that is I think there's this expectation that AI is going to boil the ocean. Like instead of saying make a cup of tea, we're saying I want you to boil the entire ocean. The reason I describe it that way is like Jasper's a good product example of that, right? Jasper does something cool. I don't know it super intimately. There's some former HubSpotters there, so I've got like anecdotal feedback. But I talked to somebody recently. She's a marketer at a tech firm that I advise. She specifically uses Jasper to write baseline copy. She doesn't publish that copy. Like to your point earlier, you just give the tool this thing and say like, go, use my audience voice for me. But Jasper's smart. It's learned her voice over the last couple months she's used it. So now when she says, write me a prompt on X, write me a PR, press release on X or Y, it does enough in terms of like the foundational work to get her to a position where she can then go and refine it and then publish it. And so I translate that to agency and I say, okay, cool. Most of the agency frontline service deliverable is done via copyright, SEO optimization, et cetera. So let's go first from the enablement and the margin component you're talking about. What if all of your copywriters, everyone that writes a blog, anything long form, those that develop email copy, et cetera, what if they could have 75% of that work done in the voice of your customer, because it's already, this AI has already consumed your prospect, your customer's content. It gets them to a baseline. And so now it's not about I don't mean to minimize, but like the menial task of like, let me go and just start from scratch. What if it gives you enough baseline that you can then go and really provide extreme value on top of that? What if your agency becomes not just a production house in terms of volume, but this really curated, audience specific, customer specific language with vertical experience, et cetera, because AI feeds so much of that mechanism into your already talented writers. So there's like sort of component one. Component two becomes maybe the other end of the argument, which is, when this stuff starts to be prevalent in, we'll use SEO, right? When you think about like optimization as a solution, there's a bunch of companies popping up. What if now you can say, let me SEO optimize, an entire web presence of a customer with the push of a button. And then it's not just going to do the work for you, because I'm not sure we're at that point, but what if it could just then go back and audit all of your teammates' potential impact in terms of mistake or possible potential good outcomes, and say, look, like here's the stuff that, you spend 2 hours doing this work. The agency can bill on those hours. Obviously, we run this machine learning that takes 15 seconds and gives you that.
Barrett, I want to pause you right there, because I think I get what you're saying. I think the audience follows immediately. The question that I would have is it relates to that, because it's a compelling pitch. Is that helping them sell any more or save any more customers? So that's the agency's problem, right? Their margins are hurting their ability to sell. But I'm not sure that helps an agency win any more deals.
It's always shocking to be reminded of people's willingness to pay for things that they could do themselves. That's always going to be why. That's always going to be a part of every economy, because opportunity cost is different, right? So the difference in, you can make a self-serve tool for me where it's like, look, now it's really easy. Changing your oil is as easy as however easy you make it. There's still going to be a bunch of people that will say, great, I'm still going to pay somebody to do it. And now the people that do it, they just have an easier time doing it than they used to, because 10 minutes of my time might be worth more than the cost of paying somebody else based on whatever else I'm doing, right? That's always the case. So no matter how many self-serve tools are, what are all these SaaS tools? They're all theoretically self-serve tools. Guess what we all do? We hire third parties to run them for us. Hey, I'll walk you through the setup wizard, the do-it-yourself setup. I'm going to hire somebody to do my DIY setup, right? That's basically what this is. So I have not quite seen evidence that AI is fundamentally different. It's all of these new things. They make certain things easier, and they create new opportunities for service providers in some areas, and they replace service providers in other areas. But I still think you're going to have, Jared, we just had a call with your wife's company, notably the other day, and it was incredible walking through some cool stuff that they're building there. But one of the things I immediately noticed was she was showing us some things that these AI tools could do. She wrote these incredibly long, detailed prompts that got us this end result.
Yeah, they're like 2 pages, Barrett. 2-page prompts to spit out a blog post on summarizing a call like this.
Right, we could have done that ourselves, right? There was no barrier. Oh, look, all you need to know is the English language. Yeah, but I don't want to sit there and write that prompt for all that time. I'd rather just pay you to do it because you already did it really well, right? So there's a way in which of course there's going to be new opportunities here. I don't want to set up the AI stuff myself, even if I can theoretically. So anyway, just as a high level observation.
That's a fair point. So I'll tie this all together. Barrett, the question then becomes, does the price need to go down? What's going to help agencies sell? So I think Isaac's point is very valid, but I'm still lacking what is going to make an agency more successful right now. And then vis-a-vis all the people trying to partner with agencies, that's the thing you pay attention to, is what's going to make the agency more successful.
Yeah, but I think the tool does that. It should at least. I don't disagree with you, Isaac. I think the the agency can add more services, Jared, right? They can wrap something in that brings in AI as a service or whatever you want to call it, right? Prompt writing as a service, maybe someday.
So it needs to be not just reduced gross margin, but also more customer value.
I think it's got to be both, because the thing is, like, you can make more money off of it. That's fine. And there's probably going to be a whole suite of tools you'll see AI touch a variety of industries. Just like makes you better, right? It gives you the prompt, everything we described, but it also has to have the other side of the same coin. I don't think industries survive when they're just single dimension.
No, definitely not.
Are you seeing any agencies right now, examples of agencies that are like immediately throwing into their service offering, either on the front end and advertising, hey, we'll help you set up AI tools and implement them, or just on the back end using them to make their work quicker, but not advertising it as a new service?
Yes to using, absolutely. Like I've talked to countless even HubSpot partners, Salesforce partners that have all made comments of it's frontier though. We don't know specifically what we're going to do. We're going to go buy a license and try it for 6 months and see what happens. The other side's, I think, very interesting. There have been a few that I've seen targeted ads say, if you're exploring AI, we can help you. I don't think that is tip of the spear. Like there is so much learning to be done.
Right.
How do you monetize it? I mean, how do you, and then what are the, like, frankly, just legal and other concerns that come with using a tool like that? And you could do that for hours, but I think that's probably there's an industry that will show up servicing both the onboarding setup and then enablement of AI. But I think each of those AI tools so far has been an attachment to some form of an existing industry. Until it really starts to break out significantly, we won't know how far it goes.
I want to frame the shift, so to speak, that I'm trying to get to is I feel like those folks that are trying to partner with agencies right now are really focused on their challenges as a software vendor, right? So like whatever their go-to-market challenges are or their success challenges or whatever they are. And I'm really trying to paint the picture for the challenge of being an agency right now. In a lot of ways, Partner Hacker, how we started was in some ways like we're a media company, but also an agency. Like we had to, add some additional value to our customers, i.e. partner tech companies, and still do. And speaking as partner tech companies, Isaac, I'll do a mid-roll shout out for MindMatrix. So I'm excited for our partnership with MindMatrix. This episode's brought to you by MindMatrix. We have a lot coming with them. So I'm just going to give them a general shout out. Go to mindmatrix.com. If you're on the enterprise or channel side listening to this and trying to scale your program, more coming around our partnership with MindMatrix and Partner Hacker. But the thing I want to get to is when I told this to Pete Caputa, he told me, Barrett, I've never thought about it that way, but I think you're right, is that the shift that HubSpot captured was the same shift that, let's say, Xero, the accounting system, captured, and they stole a lot of QuickBooks partners. And what was that shift? From project-based, one-time billing to recurring billing, right? So what industries could go through that similar transformation? Marketing agencies, because there's dozens of thousands, hundreds of thousands globally, right? And accountants, there's dozens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands globally. So Xero stole all of the QuickBooks, quote unquote partners that were installing CD-ROMs, right? And one time like, hey, let me install QuickBooks for you and I'll do your taxes at the end of the year, right? To Xero going, no, here's your monthly reconciliation report. Here's your this and those value-added monthly services. The only other industry I could think of that still has that type of disruption from one time to like monthly value add would be like legal.
Yep.
Right. That still hasn't really been disrupted at that level. But now my question is, what's after that thing for, let's say, the agency space? We had project-based to retainer-based to, is there another shift that generates that type of value for an agency? Like I would have made millions of dollars if I had a retainer-based model in my agency. I just didn't know. Is there something, what's next after retainer?
Is it AI? No, you're asking the right question. Is it AI? Like, does AI as a service become the next frontier? Because if you look at the number one problem plaguing in any agency right now, yeah, we can talk about margin and stuff. It's human capital, enough skilled people to do enough skilled work. And so, I mean, we could speculate, does AI get to a point where it's intelligent enough and learns fast enough to say, we'll let it loose on our internal server for 2 months and it comes back and it creates actual agents that produce at the level of a human being? Probably at some point, at the rate that we've been going. I could speculate that there's a world in which you could say, an agency is, Jared, like, what if your agency was 7 to 10 people that could produce at the level of an agency of 30 to 40 today? Yes, your margins are better, but does that get really interesting? Probably, because you still have to have that first shift always taking place, which is move from project to retainer. Right now, what if you don't need more? Like maybe the disruption is actually that you can be agnostic. We'll take on your ongoing services we'll do retainer work. We can do your projects too, though, because we can redesign a website in 6 weeks instead of 6 months. And it gives you that same polish and output. That gets interesting.
That is the first interesting thought I've heard, to be perfectly honest, about the agency space in the past 2 years, is that project to retainer could go retainer to project.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why
then we
not?
look at the total LTV of that
Exactly.
account. And obviously
Exactly.
the retainer is what pays the bills and you keep some margin. But then you're that go-to of like, hey, you're the agency that can execute the project. And this is where I think AI is interesting. AI as the project manager,
Yes.
right? That helps you
Yes.
scope out and pull resources together, integrates. And that's where things like, oh gosh, what was the GPT, Auto GPT, for example, could like, hey, you have something like that and they're helping execute a project. So you hire this firm and you're like, hey, every marketing campaign, I know they can just help execute 10 times faster, but they're also just doing this retainer of work. That is very interesting because my needs as a business change on the fly. Isaac, you're a CMO now. Like, how many things in the last 30 days could have you used a really like, hey, here's my SWAT team that I'm paying?
No, I'll tell you, I hate monthly recurring. Hey, you pay this agency this much per month, and then they're going to do the file. I'm like, I don't want that. I want to come at you project by project. I like paying by, because I don't know. Sometimes I might not have anything for months, and then all of a sudden I got a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, I'm getting a little crazy with this thought here, so this could be way far afield.
Let's go. No, do it. I'm in.
But you know the way that like, and it's sad that Enron got associated with this and it became such a horrible scandal, but the way that energy grids.
Okay, where are we going with this one?
And then in AWS, right? Same model where it's like, we're gonna put resources wherever they're demanded the most at any given time, whether it's electricity, computing power,
Uber.
Imagine a model. When you said, this is what got me thinking. When you said, imagine you have an agency and some of your agents are like AI agents, right?
Mhm.
Those are human resources. And 1 month you only have the demand for 2 people to work in your agency. You don't have enough work. But another agency has all of a sudden a huge spike in demand. Can those resources be allocated? And the agency, it's like
This is very interesting now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's like an agency of one that's all networked, and all of these individual contractors. It's almost like the company itself is broken up into like a flow of individuals where they need to be.
I think it lets you master being a specialist again. I mean, so much of the work is distributed to your description of being able to decentralize it. What if you've got 5 specific, like you've got a head of sales, head of CS, head of content, head of social, we can keep going. And each of them has their agent army. They can spin up as many heads as they need up to a certain limit over a period of time. I mean, it gets really interesting when you talk about the ability to produce without a human being at the steering wheel. Like, I remember being excited the first time I got in a car that had cruise control, because I'm dating myself, but like, I'm 38, right? Like, my first car didn't have cruise. I was probably, 18, 19. My second or third car had it. Oh shit, this is cool. Like, all of a sudden the car can drive itself. Not really. All it did was keep the gas pedal down. So think about that. Like, what if all of a sudden your agency in 5 years, 3 years, whatever this timeline horizon is, you could not have to struggle with human capacity? What if you could focus on quality work or whatever your specialty was, leverage an outcome, and lean into this solution as a way to do that? It gets interesting.
That is such a piercing insight. So from project to retainer to being able to go back from retainer to projects, right? So like maybe there's a baseline
At
of
scale.
work or service agreement at scale, because that's what's so terrifying about being like having that latent demand in your, because like as an agency owner, I mean, the only thing that made me sleep well at night after the first 2 years were the clients that I'd closed that came back for more work, right? Because it wasn't a net new sales cycle, from the beginning, but it was also still stressful because it's like, oh shoot, I just had 3 projects pop off. Like, I'm going to be working, a solid 70 for 80 hours this week because I don't really have that demand. But then that allows me as a business owner to not think with those constraints anymore, which is what the market wants. Like, we want to be able to execute, projects that are ad hoc and are more responsive.
No, it does. Because all of a sudden now you think about it being, so we'll use the existing terms. Your retainer is an ongoing services contract of some kind that says you have access.
With the defined scope is the other issue, I think. It's the benefit and the issue. You have to have a defined scope so that way you can staff it and deliver
Yes.
the service and the customer knows what they're buying. But In 3 months, half of it could be out of date.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then to Alex's point, like Alex said, well, what if I don't need that person this month? What if I don't have that? I only want to write 1 blog, not 3. Like all of the flexing that takes place within this service set is a lost margin. Now you don't have to worry about that. You can reallocate. I mean, I can speculate all day and say maybe it's still hourly based all of a sudden. You get back and say you can buy a certain set of hours that you can distribute across different, AI solutions. But it gets super interesting because it's such a super, super valuable part of our economy, the way that agencies deliver value across software and services and everything else. But it's such a, just again, human capital strapped and just super reduced service offering that now you get flexibility, you get, verticalization, you get specialization. It gets interesting.
What this made me think about is I don't know that the phrase is necessarily right. And I know that there were a lot of models where it's working very well. And then other places it's not working as well. But if I think about it, it's from project to retainer to consumption, right? And what I mean by consumption is typically thought of in like a very narrow context. I think Twilio is a great example of consumption, like just nailing consumption, PLG out the gate, like, hey, it's it's a penny, of text, at 10 cents per text, right? Like very easy to understand that model. And over time, you're like, oh, we're paying Twilio 20 grand a month. Like, okay, maybe we should probably finally talk to someone there, right? Like that's how that consumption would work there. Is it's pretty linear, or it at least is, it corresponds to your product growth. But I think from the service world, you've never had that ability to have that kind of scale. But I think that ability is the thing that an agency would be really well, I think, positioned to differentiate in the market, is that, hey, we have a baseline plan, so to speak, or, service or retainer. And then here's all the ways that you can spin up your marketing projects, your campaigns, your resources, your whatever, as agents. And then you're paying for the thing that you want.
Well, and it de-risks it. So that's the thing, right? So there are models like that. I've talked to agencies that do what you're describing. What they try and do is bring enough customer demand to the door that they can move resources accordingly. And then they try and subcontract and do all these different things. It doesn't work. Like you always get bit in the end. It doesn't work. The math doesn't work.
It's so hard to execute that.
You can't.
No, the math is terrible. It's terrible on that, because the client demand is always in the the front windshield. That's the client demand. You're driving right into it. And then everything else is like often in the rearview mirror. Like, how long does it take to get a new resource, spin them up, get them into your tooling, get them, how you want to work, how you want to run your business. Like that client demand, boom, all of a sudden you're looking in your windshield and the client demand's behind you. You're like, I wasn't responsive fast enough, and then it screws up your business.
Exactly. What if you can be nimble? But what if you're nimble? What if you go to this platform and you say, I need to turn on a new SEO specialist, 2 content production specialists, and somebody who can help us do frontline prospecting and demand gen. Great, done. Costs $100 a head per month for you to run those on the server, and then you can go and charge $1,000 per head to go and optimize that service for your customer. There's something to be said around the expertise of managing these systems. And that's why I think, to kind of full circle this for a second, that the AI component of it, to your earlier statement, and I think this is valuable. Both of you said it in different contexts. Like AI is not going to replace a person today, but I think there is a world in which it can replace the functional tasks that people have to do, especially in agency where it's just so button click specific, like just that mouse click moment. What if you can pull so much of that out of it, reduce the overhead cost, improve your utilization, drive a better margin, and then give the flexibility that we're talking about on top? Agencies become a serious player and component of any go-to-market now across SaaS and other industries.
Agencies serve this really nice, it's like you have a bunch of bricks and they don't perfectly fit together. And the agencies are like the mortar that you can take stones is a better example. You can take stones that aren't exactly the same fit, but you get the mortar in there. And what I mean is, like, you have all these software tools that are built for, we need to be able to serve a really big market. So that means we need to have sort of least common denominator, however you want to put it, type of use cases. But every individual company has a use case that is, there is no such thing as the ICP, right? It's ideal. It's not a real person. So every single user has something slightly different than they want to do than what the software was built for. And so that in between, that's where the humans come in. That's where the agencies or, whatever come in to help that. And I think the AI tools They might shrink that in some ways by letting there be an additional layer of software specialization, but it's still going to have to be, the software tools still are going to have to serve more generalized buckets than you'll ever get with just human to human. So it might like make that layer thinner in some ways, but you're still going to always have to have that in between. Like who's going to play ambassador arbitrage, go between me and these AI tools.
Absolutely.
I'm going to want somebody to do, even if I learn one of them, I want somebody to be like, oh, I know 6 of these different tools and I will be the orchestrator of all of them for you.
Yeah, I'll tie it back to, remember like early web development, right? When people were learning different languages and then you had like Flash show up and everyone said, oh, Flash, man, it's going to change the game. It's drag and drop and plug and play. And like, it didn't last very long. I think that there's a world in which AI specialization, which everyone obviously talks about, but specific to the agency space and the ability to say we are experts, chief ninjas at this, very verticalized, hyper-specific, whatever it is, like industry or segment of an industry. And we use our tools that we are masters of. Maybe we write our own, language at some point, and we do our own learning model development. And so there's probably like the SI version of it, the hyper-technical agency that sits in that space. But the creatives now can take advantage of hiring individuals who are experts in these different languages. I'm doing bunny ears, but like these specific types of bots and use cases, and they can master driving it. So it's almost like the tour operator that knows the history of the space. They're not driving the vehicle, but they know how to tell that story. That's interesting.
And the differentiation here is what also starts to get very interesting, right? So the differentiation becomes, we're quickly getting to a world where, buying a software or a service is no different than walking down the laundry detergent aisle, right? I mean, it's like Tide versus Gain versus, like whatever, like brand is what's differentiating in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it also feels like, how are people buying? How are people buying right now is they're turning less and less to Google. They're turning more and more to people who've done the thing that they're trying to do. Well, the people who are more willing to let's say, align to your performance, the things that you care about. I've always felt that agencies are great to partner with, even if you don't nail them, because they understand your customer as much as anyone. What do I mean by that? Is that agencies are typically beholden to customer outcomes, much more so than SaaS companies. SaaS companies are held to utilization. I bought 20 seats. Were those 20 seats activated? Like, oh, it was activated. That counts. Annual subscription, boom, recognize the revenue. All access is how I recognize my revenue for the year. Like lucky you, as an agency owner, you're like, lucky you. My clients don't want to pay me for work I already did. Much less like they're paying you for work you've delivered no value on. And it seems to me that consumption concept, like from project to retainer to consumption, could also correspond to from project to retainer to consumption, or maybe performance. I think performance-based things where for example, if you're doing that and you have a very low margin thing, the upside that some of these SaaS programs have in a 20% commission on a $50K deal, if, for example, you're a marketing agency and you're, maybe driving 10, 20, 30, 50, like that volume on the performance side, if you can not just monetize the retainer or the project, but capture some of the value that you're creating, that also seems much more possible in this world.
So to translate the language of value differently, I mean, if I think about what agencies do and where they impact, to your point, they know your customer, they know your market. And so if you're going to go to market and say, I want someone to do something, it's interesting. I just talked to a business the other day. They're 45 people, took an $8 million round, trying to grow their organization. He's like, we got to go hire a marketing leader. Why are you doing that? Well, TLDR, long and short, we need marketing. So why are you going to hire a marketing leader? Go hire a content producer first, get your voice out there a little bit, do some brand awareness. Long and short of it is what if you can hire a specialist agency in 5 years that has mastered the AI version of that? And I think what's interesting is this race to the bottom you see with the commoditized services. It's a differentiator, like you said, Jared, as well, but also the ability to empower agencies again to take back control a little bit and drive the specific pricing and value conversations they want, but also with outcomes, to your point, results, and be able to say, we did it efficiently, effectively, and with the specialization you're looking for. And that's why you hired a firm like, cooলাই.com or whatever we end up calling this thing.
It's interesting. Jared, when you mentioned legal services, I sort of was playing around with that and thinking about any of those services, and a lot of the things that agencies, marketing agencies and other agencies do is similar to this, where it's not like a repeated thing with the same outcome every time. I mean, accounting's like this too. My brother used to work at an accounting firm, and they would do this exercise as like a joke. They would have the same tax return run by like 6 different people, and they would all come out with something different. It's like literally not like if you asked 5 different lawyers to draw up a contract, they're all going to be different. Now they all work. They're all correct enough for the market, but what matters, so you think about that and you think, okay, well, could you replace something like that with an AI? You couldn't do it with a general AI because there's too much context, but you could with like a really niche down. Like one law firm says, we want AI to study all the contracts that this one guy writes. And now you can have things that basically look like his contracts, but here's where it falls apart. Now there's a problem, right? Because even the human drawn up contracts, they have typos, they have errors, they have mistakes in judgment. What works is that I get to go back to the human and say, hold on, there's a problem. And they say, oh, let me fix that. That's where you want the machine to do that front end part, but you want to talk to a real human when it's broken to make the judgment call, right? And that's where like I think you could see some of these things where you like an agency we have our own AI that does these components in it, and it's got our own voice and all this stuff. And when it breaks, we have a human at the back of it that's managing it. So you're not literally dealing with a robot all the time, and you get to kind of like soften that friction.
Yeah, you're already seeing that. I mean, there are people that are being hired. I read an article the other day talking about people being hired to own the inputs essentially to the AI. There's a company I talked to recently that said, well, ChatGPT is cool, but OpenAI is open. What if we built our own model and we trained it to only exist on servers where you paid for access? So what if you had your own dedicated AI model, consumed only your content, had only your voice, and to your point, Isaac, you could police what it did and did not do? I mean, there is a very interesting evolution that will take place where we talk about, you said brand earlier, Jared, like when brand becomes your marketable value, your agency's AI system is your identity. And so now the marketable and differentiating components of this become the, not just, ability, but the access and the voice and the tone and the experience over time that these things will have.
Now it's getting interesting. It's crazy because it's a very real market and it already exists to some degree. And there's steps that we can see existing very soon, but it doesn't take many steps beyond that to start getting into like crazy sci-fi space either, which is kind of fun. It's like, there's this grounded reality, but there's like, we're closer than ever to some pretty crazy stuff that you can start to envision.
One of the things that the AI people that I kind of trust in terms of like building a more resilient business in this era has to do with the uniqueness or resiliency or whatever you want to call it of the data set, right? So for example, any data that you can have that is unique that, you can use for a model, for a GPT, for something like that, like you're going to be in a differentiated or more resilient position, right? So like a proprietary data set, for example. And I think there's plenty of situations where that data set's somewhat emergent. I think the thing that is interesting to also think about is going kind of to like HubSpot, for instance. It's like HubSpot is a CRM company, not to pigeonhole you, but like you went from workflow and automation to down the stack to data, right? Where you have all the contacts, all the accounts, all the opties, heck, now all the partners. You're increasingly grabbing more and more data. So as an ecosystem, you're like, hey, I actually can, or as an agency, for example, I feel like why are there, hundreds of thousands of marketing agencies and how many sales agencies? I mean, hundreds, right? It's like exponentially different. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there may be this massive shift where it's like, okay, now marketing has access to all of the data through CRM and then can automate all of these things, have access to the systems of record. And here's where I think I'd love to, Barrett, get your point of view on just visionary future, all of the tech that also connects into it, right? So all of the integrations and all how that data, it's like we're using 40 SaaS tools on top of HubSpot. That seems like, okay, that proprietary data set, there is a service to sell into this company to help them make all of that work better together, the age of the connected customer. When is that world going to happen? Like the agency that is selling some AI stuff and facilitating projects, and then also not just doing that for like the blog post, but the continuity across their entire, data set, so to speak. I'd love your opinion.
People have to get comfortable with the idea of machine learning, not just being a fun phrase to use to sell a platform, but actually enabling it to change your data. Like to your point of access, I think what's interesting is imagine like, HubSpot, Salesforce, Dynamics, any CRM now, while it is a closed environment, the company obviously has access to it. So what if, as it stands today, a company can say, well, we'll release a new feature. It's got AI and it does some cool stuff. Fine. But what if it gets to a level, which it's starting to, where now, to your point, you could say as an agency, we want to distribute, we want to deploy our AI with our proprietary, whatever you want, like hammer and nail. I'll just keep it very simple here, right? And so ours has a hammer and nail function that we can execute on. We deploy it into your CRM. It runs for 3 days. It brings back and extracts specific tactical value. And that's our core differentiator. And the agency next to us, they use a wrench. And the one next to them, they use, some sort of an air compressor, whatever, right? I'm using tools agnostic. But the point is that like the differentiated value becomes about the functional ability of the AI to deliver something on top of that data set. And so yes, cleanliness is one. And yes, today we think about like, what if it could help me extract my highest value customers? And you go 3 or 4 layers deeper. There's a company I advise right now. I talk a lot about with them, the ability to look at directive behavior. What if you could measure emotional feedback from a customer across all the plugged in stuff? You got Gong and you've got Clary and HubSpot and Salesforce and all these different platforms, and deliver. Now we're talking about not just insights on what happened, but what if you could tell somebody where their customer was going to be in 3 days? What if you could tell a customer where they were going to act before they acted? So AI, not just as a service, but AI as a solution to anticipate, to articulate value before it's even in front of a customer. I mean, that gets really interesting.
It's incredible. As you were talking, I was just thinking of like just little stuff, just crazy little stuff. Like, okay, you've got your Gong call and you're talking to a prospect or a customer in there, and they mention, oh, I'm going to be at SaaStr next week. Sure. And that's automatically scraped, pulled into your marketing, and you have a live campaign that automatically targets the zip code that SaaStr is being held at with a paid ad on LinkedIn relevant to what you were talking about with them in the conversation. So now you've got like your account-based marketing, you're just pulling in, having things that can pull from all these data sources that are existing more and more. And the combination, because it's English language based, at least a lot of these early models, the combination of the qualitative and the quantitative, it's like when people speak in normal language, not needing them to speak in tags that are predefined by you in your, automation, but like in normal language, and the AI being able to take that and map that onto your workflows. That's crazy.
It's huge. There's a, I know we're close to time, but quickly here, like there's a business that I've talked to who they're sucking up CRM and recorded call and written word data right now. Their AI model trained across all of it will look for early behavioral indicators. So imagine you're in a sales process. It's not there yet, but it's close. And imagine in that sales process, you get an alert on your screen through whatever, Zoom or HubSpot or whatever you're using, right? And it says the customer is indicating X. You should say Y. Now you actually can influence human behavior because the AI is trained across so much data. It's an interesting anecdote around when the whole like OpenAI thing started to really blow up and everyone got really nervous. And one of the comments from that early, I forget his name, but the guy that was early into AI, he said specifically, the danger is not that it's Skynet today or tomorrow that's taking over the world and destroying us all. The danger is that now one specific individual, if you will, one person, if you will, has the knowledge of 10 or 15 or 20 and the power that indicates. So not only are you influencing human behavior, but it's all the outcomes that come with that. And the directive nature of the way agencies drive brand awareness, buyer behavior, et cetera, becomes AI powered. I mean, the power of that is infinite.
Barrett King, thank you so much for coming on PartnerUp and a fantastic conversation about the future of artificial intelligence, agents, and agencies. I think there's our tag right there, Isaac, for the episode. The intersection of agents and agencies. All right, PartnerUp. Barrett, you're the man. Love working with you. Look forward to seeing you at Inbound too. Partner Day. We'll be doing some cool stuff there, and definitely hanging out at Inbound this year. So, folks, we will see you all next time. Peace.